It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. If you've ever sat in your car in a grocery store parking lot, looked at the receipt, and felt something in your chest tighten, this conversation is for you. Today we're talking about what debt and the cost of daily life are doing not just to our bank accounts, but to our minds. My guest is Lindsay Bryan-Podvin. She's a financial therapist based in Ann Arbor. We're discussing the mental health weight of money amid an affordability crisis. And the phone lines are open, 313-577-1019. If money's keeping you up at night, we want to hear from you. Or if it did once, and now you're on the other side. Lindsay Bryan-Podvin, financial therapist, founder of Mind Money Balance, author of The Financial Anxiety Solution. Welcome.
Hi, Robyn. I'm so happy to be here this morning.
We're so happy to have you. Before we get into your story, which I realize informs much of the work you do, I want to start with this moment. So, as of the spring, about half of Americans, say they struggle to afford their rent or mortgage. Now, meanwhile, food prices rose over 3% over the past year, and they are forecast to keep climbing. Total household debt just hit a record $18.8 trillion. You're a financial therapist. When that macro reality walks into your office, what does it actually look like in a person?
So much of the time when somebody walks into my office or when I'm facilitating a workshop and they are bringing in that baggage of how the systemic problems show up for them as individuals, they are carrying that systemic baggage as though it is their fault as individuals. And so the biggest thing that I am dealing with, especially right now, is how shame is manifesting and showing up. As Americans, we have been fed this narrative about the American dream. And quite frankly, many of us know it's a myth, but more and more people are figuring it out. But that dream says, if you work hard, then you will be able to make it here. So when that hard work does not translate to the capacity to pay rent on time or to be able to afford a new pair of shoes or something like that, we take that so personally and we take it as though it is a personal failing. So when the system is so fractured as it is right now, it's showing up as shame, as guilt, as embarrassment, and anxiety in my office and in my workshops.
I'm wondering if you are encountering more of this shame and guilt and embarrassment than you were, let's say, a year ago.
Not a year ago, I would say. I would say this has been going on for a while. And I would say it's been a few years where we've started to see this build. And certainly with the things that are going on with our current administration, it has absolutely exacerbated a problem that already existed. And what we know is that more and more people are going to be pushed from kind of barely scraping by into no longer scraping by, into not having access to things like healthcare or having access to subsidized daycare or having access to some of these things that, quite frankly, should be a part of common humanity that we should be extending to the people in our country. So absolutely, it has increased, but it's been building. This isn't new.
This is telling me a lot about you because I realize, Lindsay, that you have your master's in social work,
yes,
but you have your bachelor's in sociology.
You did your homework.
I did indeed. And so you bring that into your practice. You're looking at the systems at play. We're going to get into that, into the systems at play versus the individual, and also this notion of rugged individualism and how that plays so much into what we're talking about right now, the shame and the guilt and the failure. First, though, I want to think about what all of this actually does to the body.
Sure.
When money is this tight, this constant, what are the physical symptoms that people don't connect to their bank account?
The physical symptoms are similar to the physical symptoms that we experience anytime we have some sort of stressor. So when we experience stress, our body is going to respond with an increased heart rate, with a tightness in your mouth or in your throat, a tightening of muscles, sweatiness, headaches, stomach aches, things like that. That can also manifest as difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, sleeping too much, experiencing anxiety-like symptoms such as racing thoughts, having difficulty quieting that noise. And that is just in an instant. But if we compound that over time of experiencing chronic financial stress, we know what the impacts of chronic financial stress are on our mental health and our physical health. And we're talking about that compounded impact over time.
So is this something then that you're talking with people about that they get wrong about that stress? I mean, when someone can't sleep because of money, what do they tend to blame instead of the money?
Well, it's not that they don't understand that there is a connection, but it is that the dominant narrative over the last 30, 40 years is that if you're not sleeping because you're stressed about money, you should get up and work much harder so that you don't have to stress about money. And I think that is so short-sighted. It works as a really great viral clip to point the finger of blame at somebody. But the reality is that there's so much more going on there. So in my work, what I'm trying to do is help people connect the dots to the way that their relationship with money shows up in their body, in their feelings, in their thoughts, and in their actions. Oftentimes, you gave that great example. We understand that money is emotional if we are going through the grocery store and we're tired and we're hungry. That is the time when we end up adding extra things to our cart or we don't really stick to our grocery list. And that's a good example of how our emotions and our financial behaviors are connected. So when I'm talking to somebody who is stressed out about money and it's impacting their ability to sleep, what we're also trying to do is connect to the times when they feel less anxious about their money. We touch money and we interact with money at so many different points in our days and in our lives. We are earning money, loaning it, spending it, tapping to pay. We're doing all of these things, but it isn't true that every single time that we interact with money, it is as stressful as keeping us awake at night. Maybe when we get our paycheck, we feel that rush of excitement and we feel proud of ourselves and we're starting to feel a little bit more even keeled. Or maybe when, somebody comes in or maybe knocks at the door and is selling popcorn for their troop or cookies for their troop and we're able to purchase that box of cookies and contribute to our community, we feel excitement or we feel joy or we feel pride. So my job is to say, what are the times when you're already experiencing a positive relationship with money, and how can we take some of that existing positive relationship and bring it to some of those areas that you find yourself more stressed out? How can we bring some of that pride and that joy to when you sit down and look at your bank account and you experience that stress and that anxiety and that overwhelm? How can we slow down your reactions so that you can tell yourself, I have the capacity to do this. I can take a few breaths. I can look at what's going on and I can start to make some different types of changes.
Lindsay, is it about not tying morality to food? Because I think about recovery spaces. I think about when it comes to eating disorders, when it comes to addiction, but I'll think about first the former with eating disorders and the idea that we don't want to call any kind of food good or bad.
Correct.
Is it the same thing with money and how we treat it? And is that something that you're working with your clients?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So yes, it is important for us to have more moral neutrality around our relationship with money. And I also think it's important to point out that certain types of people are demoralized for having debt, whereas other types of people are put on a pedestal. So if somebody who is in that 100 to 400% of poverty, and they have some sort of consumer debt, we say that is a moral failing. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't budget. Yeah. You're wrong. You're broken. But if we take somebody on the other end of that socioeconomic ladder and we say, oh my gosh, they're leveraging all of this capital so that they don't have to pay taxes and so that they can earn as much money as physically possible, then we go, oh my gosh, they figured it out. They have a loophole, and we praise them. So it's interesting who we decide to demonize and who gets to opt out of having debt tied to being morally negative.
You're talking about breaking through some ideas that are very ingrained in American society here when it comes
Absolutely.
to making money and to what we consider success. My guest is Lindsay Bryan-Podvin. She's a financial therapist based in Ann Arbor. This is the Metro on WDET, and we're talking today about the mental health toll of debt and high prices, and we're taking your calls. How is money impacting your day-to-day quality of life, your peace of mind? The number is 313-577-1019, and I do want to go to the phones because we have Joan in Northville on the line. Joan, what's on your mind today?
Hi. I am under so much stress because of my financial situation. I am actually an attorney, and most people think I would not have any type of financial issues, but because of some health issues that I have, I cannot work a very high-pressure attorney job that would pay a lot of money. So the job that I do have pays $23 per hour. They don't offer consistent 40-hour-a-week work, and also even when they do, I am not able to work that 40-hour week because of my health issues. And so I feel depressed. I feel fatigued. I have trouble with my sleep. I've been referred to go to, it's causing me a lot of body issues, pain in my neck, back, shoulders, etc., which is also affecting how much I can work, to be honest, because when I do my work on the computer, it causes that much more pain because of the position my body has to be in to do the work.
Joan, thank you so much for giving us a call and for being really candid about what you're dealing with right now. Lindsay, Joan is echoing a sentiment we've heard from a lot of listeners lately. It's that the work they're doing is just not enough. That there is this sense that there is no way, as much as we are treading water, like there's no way to fully keep our head above water. And this has real physical consequences. Are you hearing similar things in your practice?
Yeah, I am. And I really appreciate, like you said, that Joan had the strength and courage to call in. And I think she touched on something that is really important, which is the assumption that people who have a certain title must have it all together. So many of my clients and participants in the workshops that I facilitate have these, career day style jobs. And you would make these assumptions that a lawyer, a physician, an engineer, a nurse shouldn't be in this type of financial situation because how could they possibly? They're making this good money. And I also think Joan's speaking to a few other things. So one is that she's touching on this fractured healthcare system and how financially impactful it is on us. So she was hinting at I don't get enough hours, and my hypothesis there is that if you don't get enough hours, then you don't qualify for health insurance and through your employer, and that means you have to pay for it on your own on the marketplace. My guess is she also makes too much to qualify for Medicaid, and now we've pulled Medicaid away from so many people, thus pushing people, again, who are kind of getting by into the situation where they are no longer getting by. And there's so much in Joan's story that speaks to, again, how these systems have made it almost impossible to survive. And yeah, I'll just stop there, but I'm hearing it. I'm hearing it all the time.
I mean, that was a very astute, quick assessment, Lindsay. What you're talking about is that there are a lot of people sitting in this gray area where they're reaching out for some sort of support and they don't qualify on either end for it. And they are finding themselves pretty much alone in this moment.
Right.
My guest is Lindsay Bryan-Podvin. She's a financial therapist based in Ann Arbor. We're talking about the mental health toll of debt and high prices here on the Metro on WDET. And the question underneath all of it, when you can't get ahead, is that you or is that the economy? An economy that's feeling increasingly shaky. When we come back, if it is the system's fault, where does that leave you and your power to do anything about it? The phone lines are open, 313-577-1019. We'll be right back. It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. We're back with Lindsay Bryan-Podvin. She's a financial therapist based in Ann Arbor. We're talking about money and mental health in a moment when daily life feels increasingly unaffordable. And we're taking your calls too. The phone lines are open, 313-577-1019. Now, Lindsay, I want to trace your own trajectory and how it informs the way that you counsel people today. So your first job after you received your master's in social work at the University of Michigan was doing refugee resettlement work at a nonprofit. And the first paycheck came in a lot lower than what you'd been making waitressing. Is that right?
Yes.
Walk me through that moment.
Yeah, it's a tough moment because I want to be really clear that it isn't just the nonprofit that I was working for. This is a scenario, again, that so many people find themselves in. And I have tremendous advantages and privileges that allowed me to get to where I was with no debt. So I had previously kind of been able to buy into this American dream. Work hard, go to school, you'll be fine. And then I got that first paycheck and the shame hit me like a wave. I felt like I completely had squandered my financial privilege. I felt like I was, now in the situation where I was living paycheck to paycheck, and the shame that I experienced, which cognitively I understand, but emotionally, again, I had this financial privilege that I didn't have to live that distress personally. And so what did it mean to go from being okay financially to really living in a paycheck to paycheck situation? So I went to the library. This is before podcasts were really a thing. And I would check out armfuls of personal finance books. And they were all telling me the same thing, Robyn. They were saying, it's your own fault. It's because you buy too many shoes, you drink too many lattes, and you take fancy vacations. And I'm like, I am.
No, and no.
Right? Yeah. My mom can probably attest to the fact that, like, at that point in time, my shoes would literally be like clobbering, falling apart. And she'd be like, girl, we got to
There's
fix
no
this
more
situation.
sole on your shoe.
Right. So I tried to solve the solution by education and information and knowledge. And physically, what was happening to me, I had previously really well-managed depression and anxiety, and then all of a sudden, my symptoms are flaring. And I develop insomnia for the first time in my life. And we all can probably connect the dots that when you are experiencing this increase in mental health distress and not sleeping a lot, all of a sudden I'm getting sick constantly. I'm getting colds, I'm getting flus, I'm getting every bug that comes my way. And yet I'm in this cycle where I can't really take time off of work. It was only allotted X number of PTO days. So it just became this thing that I felt like I'm doing the thing I'm supposed to do. I went to school, I got the degree, I did my internship, I'm budgeting my darndest, and yet, so close to the edge. And again, I have tremendous financial privilege heading into this situation.
I mean, yeah, I think we have to stay on that point for a moment because we have to look at this from a different viewpoint. Someone hearing this might be thinking, your parents paid for school.
100%.
You had a job.
Absolutely.
You weren't homeless.
Absolutely.
This is a privileged person making her anxiety into a crisis. What do you say to that?
Yeah, what I say to that is you're not wrong. And yet, I still experience those symptoms. And I think this is a problem that we get to in our country, especially where we say, you don't have it as hard as me, therefore you're not allowed to complain. Look at what happened with student loan forgiveness. Well, I paid off my loan, so you should have to suffer the way that I did. I don't subscribe to that mindset. Anyone who says to me, you have financial privilege, you don't get to complain, I don't disagree with the sentiment of where they're coming from. And I would say, now what can we do together? Obviously, I do the work that I do because I believe that we have the capacity to change. And to me, that means collaborating with one another and helping lift one another up instead of pulling that ladder up behind us if we had an advantage.
Lindsay, now we have to look a little bit more at the systems that are at play
Sure.
right now. The idea that some people are worthy of support or worthy of our empathy, does this come down to American individualism?
Yeah, and then a million other things too, right? Right. It is so much easier to say that, yes, you have to work hard and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And if you don't do it, then you're to blame because you don't have willpower, you don't have discipline, you're not smart enough, whatever the thing is. But then when one little thing goes sideways, whether it is a health condition flares up, you get a flat tire on the way to work that you weren't expecting, your landlord raises your rent by 10%, all of a sudden now you suddenly are subscribing to that belief that you also should have just worked harder, should have budgeted better, should have done all of these things. So it's that, but it's really tricky. It's the water we swim in, right? We like to say that is the way that it should be until, oh my gosh, we're on the other end of it. And then we're like, hang on. Now I need to look at the system.
I mean, this also ties back into something that's central in your work, and that is addressing shame.
Yeah.
Because if you have done certain things in your life, if you have achieved certain things, if you have certain degrees, then you shouldn't be struggling. And hence you feel this shame when you are, and you're not about to talk about it then. Mm-hmm. And then this, creates a loop essentially, and deepens the stigma. I mean, I'm thinking about earlier in the show when Joan called in from Northville. She's an attorney, but she was saying that financially things are not working out for her. Mm-hmm. And there are people who will hear her story and think, well, she lives in Northville. That's a nice suburb. Why doesn't she do something like move to a cheaper area? I mean, how often is it that people can, in fact, downscale to make their lives financially easier to handle? And how often are you talking to people who feel just like they're stuck?
Yeah. I wish I had good stats to share with you of how it is that people are able to downsize. But I can tell you anecdotally what I've seen in my practice, what I've heard from my friends, what I've heard from family members is that this idea of just downsize your way into a financial situation that is more sustainable isn't really that much of an option. If you take somebody who is, 65, 70 years old, let's say they've lived in their house for 30 years, now they want to downsize to a condo. Well, plot twist, these condos now are over $1 million. You just had somebody on your show the other week talking about tax implications, particularly in Detroit.
Look at you doing your homework.
Yes, I try to reciprocate.
And what that person was saying is that you are better off staying in that home because of property taxes than selling it and downsizing because you're going to end up paying a lot more for property taxes.
Right. And I live in Ann Arbor where the biggest kerfuffle of the last 2 years has been, are we allowed to build more types of different styles of houses so that we can accommodate the people who want to live there? And people are up in arms about it. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that maybe 30 years ago, you could downsize from a house if you were, over your skis, so to speak, into a condo or an apartment. But try to find a condo, try to find an apartment, try to find somewhere else to live that is less than where you're living now. And then we forget to factor in all of the literal costs that it takes to move, right? To pack up your things, to take time off of work, to have a vehicle that's large enough to transfer all of your stuff from one place to another, not to mention the social infrastructure that we have built in the places that we live, the family, the friends, the neighbors that we get to know that helps to make a community deep and connected and also benefits our mental health, and can also be the thing where, I think the other day, my partner and I were out of town and a package lands on our front door. We have the social infrastructure that a neighbor, before we even have a chance to look at our Ring camera and say, oh, shoot, there's something on the front door. They say, hey, FYI, I grabbed that package. It's in my house. Text me when you get home. That's also what we're missing out on when we say just move somewhere cheaper.
You're talking about the very intensive process and the long process of building community.
Yes.
And how important that is to your mental health as well, right? And so uprooting means you may lose that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to your story. We only have a couple minutes left here, and I think that it translates a lot for people. So I'm going to have you answer this question and then give us something to sit with here.
For
because
sure.
you read every personal finance book you could find in the library.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It told you these books: stop going to brunch, you're wasting your money on shoes, punish yourself more. You were already doing all of that.
Mm-hmm.
A year in, you asked for a raise. What happened?
I was told no, and I was told that I should be grateful to have a job in this economy.
What do you want people to take from that moment?
That I followed every single step that I was supposed to, including negotiating and advocating for a raise. And even though I followed the playbook that, again, told me, if you do these things, then you will have this outcome, and it didn't happen, talk about the shame, it comes back, it comes back, it comes back. I looked for a different job that paid more. And that was what allowed me to implement the things that these books had been talking about, and actually gave me the capacity to not just have the financial breathing room, but to also allow me to, with that financial breathing room, get to do the things that are also beneficial for my mental health, for my relational health, for my community health. To do things like have access to a gym membership, or to be able to have my friends over and cook a meal for them, to be able to donate on repeat to my local public radio station, right? Those are also the things that help to reinforce that when you have enough funds, then yes, you can move your money around and make it work for you. But oftentimes it is that top number isn't big enough, not that the number that you are spending is too high, which is what most personal finance experts want to tell us, is that you're simply just not disciplined enough.
So what I'm taking from this is, if you are working hard in this moment to try and stay afloat and feeling great anguish about your failure to do so, your biggest lesson for us all right now is to not feel shame about that.
Yeah.
To not come from a place of disempowerment.
Yes. And I would also say to the community piece and to the resource piece, lean on your community, look for local resources that can help to make that connection. There is no shame in taking advantage of, if you need to, grabbing a bag of groceries from the food pantry. In Washtenaw County, where I live, they are starting to partner seniors who own their homes with folks who are lower income so that they can live in their home for a smaller amount. So find what exists out there, and yes, dial down the shame too.
Lindsay Bryan-Podvin, she's a financial therapist based in Ann Arbor, founder of Mind Money Balance, author of The Financial Anxiety Solution. Lindsay, thank you so much.
Robyn, my pleasure.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. Coming up, primary elections are just around the corner. We'll zoom in on a state Senate election that's taking place in parts of Downriver and Detroit. That's next on the Metro. Stay with us.